Well. It's Tuesday, August 1st. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Bob Harris. This is the Football Diehards YouTube channel. I know, I hear you out there. What the hell's going on here? It's Tuesday. Yes, our usual time for these on the Hotseat sessions is Wednesday at 7 p.m. But our crack production staff, and by the crack production staff, I mean Emo Cadlick, has other obligations tomorrow. So here we are. FootballDiehards.com is the website. We appreciate you joining us here on the YouTube channel a couple times every week. Normally Wednesday nights at 7, Saturdays at noon Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything live streams. I had a great time last week. If you can catch the replays of all these, they're floating around out there. Subscribe to the Football Diehards YouTube channel, please, and hit the notification bell so you find out when we're coming on, before we're coming on. If you've previously completed those YouTube-ish tasks, hit the like button. It's right down there. Hit it. I'll hit the dislike button so everyone can feel free to do that as well. There's no incriminations. Great to see everyone. Brian Larkin coming in with a new word today, FOBO. Fear of better options. I like that. No fear of better options here, though, with our guest today. I'd like to introduce him now, the great Nate Marcum. You know him from Fantasy and Frames, Fantasy Pros, great IDP ranker there. Shoot the Gap Pod and the Fourth and Frames Pod. Love this crew Jorge has put together. Nate, how are you?
I'm good, man. I was worried there about that fear of better options, if that was directed at me or not. But I've been called worse, and I will gladly accept that. And hopefully I don't live up to that role for the next few minutes.
Greetings to many of the people in the chat again. John Fusek, Troy Olson is out there. Voice en Fuego, Drew 3MR, Dame Overboard, great to see you. Albert, Bob Voitko, Jim Furry, thanks for coming in. Alan Hepworth, always a pleasure to have you here, sir. Always a great crew. We'll surely have more coming in. You guys know the drill. Put your comments, questions, and other chicanery in the chat, and Nate and I will address it over the course of the next hour. We'll also hit on some burning topics, and there are some of them burning my ass right now as I'm sitting here waiting to see what's going on with Johnathan Taylor. Nate, I guess, I like to frame these things, like this. And I'll use an example. For instance, in June, we were talking about a story with the Buffalo Bills that Stephon Diggs, super disgruntled, unhappy, run off the practice field, sent home, comes back, everything. What are we talking about this week? We're not talking about Stephon Diggs being unhappy. In fact, Diggs says all is well with the Mafia, so good for them. But I think a lot of these stories, I think the question I ask myself is, what will we be saying about this the second week of September? So Johnathan Taylor, in case anyone's been hibernating, not happy, would like his contract extended. Jim Irsay says, nah, not doing that. Met in the owner's luxury bus and came out of there saying he had requested a trade. Stephen Holder reports from ESPN that the trade came way earlier, the trade request, and this situation has been devolving. It's a mess, Stephen Holder said. What are we to make of this? I don't think Johnathan Taylor has a lot of options, but he is currently on the PUP list. How are you handling this one? What are we going to be talking about the second week of September?
I mean, I think there's a couple different narratives that we might be talking about. One is hopefully that we were all much ado about nothing, and Johnathan Taylor realizes that he's messed with an evil madman and Jim Irsay, and it was all moot, and he just decided to take the money, don't pass up on the money. Or two, the half glass empty in me says, oh man, how bad has Anthony Richardson been since Johnathan Taylor's not in the backfield and he doesn't have anybody to keep defenses honest? I hope it's the first of those two options, but I worry a little bit about it. I have a lot of Anthony Richardson. You sniped me in a draft so far earlier. I had choice words for you. I've since retracted those words because you have me on here now. Of course, present company doesn't be insulted. But I do worry about that as a whole. I think that's, to me, the biggest dip is outside of Johnathan Taylor is what can happen to Richardson.
Right, the most explosive threat in this offense, not named Anthony Richardson, is Johnathan Taylor. Mike Dempsey, my co-host on the radio, often says this. I mean, think about the challenge this is going to present opposing defenses at the mesh point when they're trying to decide on RPOs between Johnathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson. There's going to be big plays to be had. And I'm totally with you there. So, and we are in a great Wendy early out there in the chat that got me into this battle of the sexes. Your wife is in there. We're having a great time drafting away on Sleeper. It's a fun draft. And when are you drafting? What is the approach with Anthony Richardson I think there are many ways to go about this, but the one I'm using is drafting him well ahead of ADP and get someone more solid either before or after.
Yeah. So if you look at really about the last 5 days over at NFBC, he has an average of about 18. He has a low of 31, a high of 10. 10 seems like someone maybe that person who was hibernating just jumped into a draft, or maybe it was they hadn't adjusted yet. I, in the Raz Bowl, actually got him at the 2-9 spot. So, and it was, go big, go home type approach. I'm just of the belief that, this running back, I would say, group meetings that they're having, the coup to take over the running back pay scale is not going to hold through, and he's going to eventually come back to Indy, and hopefully did you see him walk around on camp, those videos that they show where
Yep.
It looks like me getting up out of bed after sleeping a little too long with, it's not a good sign. You don't want to mimic Nate Marcum when it comes to walking in any capacity.
No, it's true. And so, I do have some concerns. I think probably we will not be talking. I think most of these situations resolve for the positive. People who will come to this broadcast, and I see some of you out there joining. Andrea, thanks for coming. Tracy, I'll get to your question here in a minute. Jeff M., glad you got your magazines. Thanks, everyone, again for coming. But I think, what I say often on the radio program and here is the public portion of negotiations are always the most contentious. This is where the public opinion is being swayed. The real work is being done behind the scenes, and much calmer voices probably prevailing. I do have a concern that I'm not as familiar with Johnathan Taylor's agent. I think he's more of an entertainment guy than a sports guy. And I think maybe Taylor, and I could be wrong here. Correct me, Chad, if I am. I'm sure he will. Fact check me. But I believe he's got a limited set of people in the sports business. So he said some things on Twitter. Jim Irsay says things on Twitter. They inflame the situation, inflame the emotions. I don't think Chris Ballard is operating on emotions, right? He is operating with Jim Irsay in his ear. And I think that's almost like having emotions because it's like having, I think Irsay is the loose cannon here. We saw this with his hiring, the hiring of Jeff Saturday. And I do think he'll be the push behind getting Anthony Richardson to start. I guess that's where I'll take this. Should Anthony Richardson be the starter right away? Is there any reason not to start him?
I mean, I can't think of any reason. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be – I didn't think they were going to be highly competitive with or without him starting personally, or with or without Johnathan Taylor on the team. I thought they have a better chance of winning clearly with JT in the fold. But I'm also of the belief that if you invest and you want to get your quarterback out, and there's some learning curves that can happen, and there's maybe a steep one when it comes to an offensive coordinator that hopefully we saw with Jalen Hurts that maybe he shortened that learning curve a little bit with Shane Steichen. So I mean, there's a chance that happens. I'm in favor of starting Richardson, but that also goes back to the fact that I'm highly invested and I'm selfish.
Right. I have to. I think I've said it here many times. I think he's the lottery ticket of this draft, right? So if you're buying lottery tickets, you don't buy the $50,000 prize scratch, you buy the $1 million prize. And he's that. And so that's the piece I've been investing in for that reason. There's an associated piece there that I think I've told myself, Nate, after last year when I missed out on guys like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Amari Cooper because I was worried about their quarterback situations, that I'm not going to let the quarterback situations scare me off people, right? Micheal Pittman currently going as wide receiver 35. 60 current ADP on Underdog is up right in the 70 range. Are we overlooking him? Are we giving by the way, another guy that I think is getting the same treatment, Mike Evans, who talked a little bit about this today and seems highly amused that we're all being dismissive of him because of his quarterback questions. He'll remind us he hasn't played with good quarterbacks the entire time. By the way, neither has Micheal Pittman Jr. Are we overlooking these guys right now?
I think Micheal Pittman's being overlooked in the fact that in an offense where it's an RPO, they typically have one focal point. And the one focal point is not going to be Alec Pierce. It's going to be someone maybe over the middle, intermediate, and that sets up well for Pittman. The concern I have, again, twofold, goes back to Johnathan Taylor. You take away the defense being honest, if they're even any remote chance of an RPO, if they're competent defensive players and defensive coordinators, you're probably going to focus in on Micheal Pittman and Anthony Richardson and leave, Evan Hull and Alec Pierce and the rest of the lot unattended. So yeah, I say this, but yet when I'm on the button and it's time for me to hit the button for Micheal Pittman, there's that somebody that the Bob Harris is on my shoulder to pull my finger back, or is Bob Harris pushing my finger down? What do you think?
I'm pushing that thing. I think the price is right. I'm always, make the joke, and I hope Royal Slate isn't out there taking offense to this. And Mr. Scampers is howdy Scampers. Like to be the fantasy fireman, want to run into that building of burning value and pull out the body, right? I want to grab that guy when the price is going my way, and that's the whole idea. Alan Hepworth knows this. He grabbed the Taylor in the mid fourth round in an EFFC. Yeah, fingers crossed it comes a great value. I think that's what you do, right? Those are league winning moves where you say, damn it, I'm going to score this value. Now, do they always win you the league? No, and you have to build your roster accordingly. And I think that's the key here. You can take a chance on some of these players because the price is better than it should be. And I think that's what I'm aiming to do. I'm looking to leverage those values. And I think you're getting that with Pittman and Mike Evans for that matter, Chris Godwin for that matter, and others. Terry McLaurin too, I think, is in that same boat. He talked a little bit today about the series of quarterbacks he's played with, and he's not using that as an excuse. And what is he excusing? It's been a pretty damn good run for him so far. So have high hopes for him as well. Another situation, I want to get to a question here because I think it's a fun question. I've said my answer. I'd like to hear yours. Tracy Bullrick wants to know, it's his this year in his 12-team half-point PPR snake draft, choosing their own draft pick order, just like we did in the Scott Fish Bowl. Which position, Nate, do you like best? He was thinking, or Tracy, I don't know, maybe it's her. I'm sorry, Tracy. Don't mean to offend. Thinking 6. What are you thinking?
It's just straight, not SupFlx, correct?
Straight.
Okay.
Straight
yeah, I actually, you know what? I like 6. I like 6 because you know what I'm leaning now, and I'm gonna show my cards, if you will. I'm having a really solid attempt and process I'm taking Nick Chubb right there, and I'm happy with doing so. I'm pushing him with the amount of the concerns with the running backs. He's one of the few that I think is maybe the reception game. We know where it's at. We don't know where it's at. We want to wish in one hand and in the other. And at the end of the day, he just provides for me that kind of, I don't feel like he can miss with the first round pick. I'm saying that, I'm not going to would at the same time. So any Chubb owners, don't worry. But yeah, I'm right there. Yeah. I don't necessarily care too much for the early picks this year as much as normal.
Yeah, I grabbed him in Murph's FFCC 23 draft. It's kind of similar to Scott Fish in the layout. It's a 2-quarterback league, 3rd round reversal, etc. I grabbed Chubb in the 2nd round, got Joe Burrow in the 1st round, and Chubb as my 4th running back off the board, which is about as high as I've taken him. But I'm starting to get there too. I think this is a good season for him. Ahead of Barkley, he went after Ekeler, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey. At the top of the wide receiver group, a lot of people have the same 3 guys, and maybe we're leaving out Tyreek Hill out of this conversation. It's Jefferson, Chase, and Kupp. Do you see it that way? What order you like them in, and do you include Tyreek Hill in that group?
I can make a case for Tyreek Hill in that group. I think that kind of goes. I'm still leaning Kupp. I think that I'm more comfortable with the Rams offense than others. I think that's going to probably come down to what it is. If you believe that a healthy Matthew Stafford is on the field for the majority of the time, I think it would be crazy not to have Cooper Kupp in that top 3. But if you want to be sound in reasoning and think that we're 2 different players that both have had some injuries and the offense doesn't exactly look as explosive as what we may think, sure, Tyreek Hill is in a situation, but Tua is not exactly too far removed from being in another thing to pay attention to. But those are definitely my 3 with Tyreek 3.5.
What's your order on that top 3?
It's Jefferson, Chase, and Kupp. And I in agreement. Is that you?
No, I go Kupp, Jefferson, Chase, but I'm like they're so close. It's so close that I'm not arguing with anyone over the order. I'm going with the average points per game. Kupp has been really consistent and solid there the last couple of years. Jefferson has disappeared a game on me. Maybe that's why I'm penalizing him. And Chase, look, let's get into the Joe Burrow situation here a little bit, right? I think people are overplaying this. I was talking to your colleague, Stacey Perez. In real time, she was drafting and saw him slip down on the day he was hurt below I want to say Lamar Jackson, and Justin Fields. Is that a situation you're looking to leverage as well? If people are like going, oh man, I got to watch out for this one. Is that one you're like, I'm all in. I feel pretty comfortable. This is just a minor issue and they're playing it smart.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I also forget sometimes that we are the degenerates that are drafting all these teams in June and July, and the overreaction now is 10 times what it would be as if we were 6 days away from the start of preseason. Not, at the point it was 26 days. So yeah, I love to see him dip about an extra. I think it was about a round and a half in one of the leagues that I saw. He was getting near I think it was the 6th round is where he had fallen to, and I couldn't pass that up. Oh my gosh, great.
Love it when that happens. That's what those are the things out there you should be looking for. And I do think that just a reminder, Joe Burrow has missed training camps, has had no preseason action the last 2 years coming off the ACL and the appendectomy last year. Got some more questions coming in. Andrew Ledbetter, Nate, has this one. 10-team SupFlx and 2 keepers. Plans on keeping Dak at round 4. Keep Davante Adams round 2. Devonta Smith round 4. Or Ekeler at 1. The top QBs left will be along with Jefferson, Chase, McCaffrey, Kupp. So the top QBs left. So it's Adams 2, Smith 4, Ekeler 1.
So the question I always have is, what pick number are you? Because if you're early enough that you can regain Ekeler, I think that you obviously would throw him back. And for me, right. I'm on the Davante Adams side. I know many aren't. I think that that's an area where I want to keep Adams, but I also feel like there's this constant push of pushing Adams down because the concern with Jimmy G that I might say Devonta Smith and Dak might be the smarter play because you might be able to get the other two at where you would have to keep them at. But you're playing a game of chicken. That's tough when you're keeping 2 and you're assuming what others are going to do. But I have to assume most people are probably going to keep quarterbacks, usually in a super flex. So
right.
I'm keeping Dak, and I love Devontae. I want to say Devontae, but I think
I want to say Devontae too. I'm going to say it.
I think that I don't want to play chicken and miss out.
So I think the key here is number 1 is 10-team. The top quarterbacks we test. So Jefferson, Chase, McCaffrey, Kupp will all be out of there. There's still some good receivers left. Smith in round 4 to me. I mean, I'm not seeing him get out of round 2 and 12 teams. So this is a 10-team. He'd probably be in 3. So you're gaining around there. You're getting Adams at about price. And you're getting Ekeler obviously at price. I wouldn't talk you out of Adams. I'd probably do a slight lean Smith and hope I can make up that ground in the draft. But it is that close. I mean, it's a pretty agonizing decision. Do I think Davante Adams is going to continue to get 180 targets or more? Maybe so. I mean, we'll say. I don't know that I expect Jacoby Myers to cut into that. There is no, tight end of note there, and all due respect to the rookie Meyer. And so I'm probably I'm all in on Adams, but I like Smith an awful lot. I think I'll take that extra round and go Smith, and maybe hope I can get Adams back because maybe people are off him.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you. Talk today. By the way, Josh Jacobs, the Raiders, according to Josina Anderson to CBS, say that they're willing to reopen talks. Sounds like we have a path to success here with the Saquon Barkley deal getting done. We see how it works, and I think maybe Jacobs sees how it's going to work. I think he already knows. Are you confidently drafting him? And I think we're all getting some value on him as well.
Yeah, I am. And I think that even goes back as far as when he said he was sitting in the car waiting. And I realized that, when that can happen and all of a sudden you get your heart ripped out, sometimes there's vindication. But for the most part, I think he just wants to get a deal done. And I think that they do as well. And I'm comfortable with drafting him as well. Again, that same Rasbel team, if we haven't got a trend yet, it is the all risk it, no biscuit type thing. And I ended up taking Jacobs, oh my God, is that me? That is terrible. Good. And I apologize for having that on.
You're good.
Jacobs, I paired with in the 4th. And so third, I'm sorry. And I'm comfortable taking him there. I don't know how much further the dip's going to be. Like right now, I see his average, his ADP over the last couple days through the NFPC is 36, 37, with a low of 52. Now, Bob, if you're in a draft and you're at the 52nd spot, and let's say you go robust RB and you have 2 or 3 at this point just because of the value, how do you pass up Jacobs at 52 in any situation?
You don't. If you thought last year, remember the consternation last year when we saw, he's playing in the Hall of Fame game. What are they doing here? And there was a couple possibilities. Dempsey and I talked about it on the Football Diehards radio program all the time, is that the most likely outcome, because they were Patriot-type people, they could do the committee, right? That was always a possibility. But the more likely idea was they would run the wheels off him. He's a rental. Well, now he's a more expensive rental, but a rental nonetheless. I don't think they're seeing him fast 1 year, so I expect a heavy workload again. By the way, Andrew put in, he mistyped, would have Dak at 4 and Devonta Smith at 5. I think that seals the deal for both of us and makes it a little easier even still. So Brian Larkin had 6th pick. He's going for the Kelce conundrum, as explained in the Diehards magazine. Where are you at on Travis Kelce in general? Is he a first-round pick for you, and how early in the first round are you going?
So I feel like around that 8 spot is where I feel the most comfortable. Where I'm at on Kelce, obviously behind me, being Chiefs fan, I will play to my heart, tug on my heartstrings with the fantasy team because it's not reaching on some ridiculousness. But I don't have a problem with them going at 6. I was talking earlier this week, and I did a little comparison. I started looking at some of the wide receivers and the metrics that Travis Kelce had last year in total yardage, touchdowns, red zone efficiency, red zone targets. There were only 3 other wide receivers in the entire NFL that matched at or better than him, and it was Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, and, well, at the time it would have been Cooper Kupp, but and Jamar Chase had they kept on. And so you have Kelce in the elite of the wide receiver tier at a position of obvious, benefit. And the one thing that's crazy to think, and maybe this is, out there, but I think his target rate was 21%. And with a team that truly doesn't have someone like Juju who may corral more, they have this spread open. I don't think it's ridiculous to think that he could see 3 to 4 higher percentage and get closer to 25%. And what does Travis Kelce do with 25% of Patrick Mahomes' targets? Are we talking a greater season than he had last year? That's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. And I don't think there is a too early. If you have the first overall pick and you want Travis Kelce, you're not getting him later in the draft. Emil Cadlick, if you go to the YouTube page, people go to the shorts. Emil has a nice little piece on if you believe Travis Kelce is going to remain Travis Kelce, draft him as you would draft him when you have the chance. And it's in the first round and at any point in the first round. So don't be afraid to go early on him. I've talked a lot about it, Nate, over the course of time. I think the Johnathan Taylor lesson learned last year was, I'm not putting all my first overall picks in that same basket, right? I'm spreading them out, and I think there are probably 6, maybe 7 guys that I've rotated through with that first pick overall. Get that option in a lot of best balls, right? So if you're playing enough, you're going to have a lot. And I'm spreading it out a little bit. And I think it's not an unreasonable approach. How are you dealing with it this year? Is there a single number 1 overall for you?
No, there hasn't been. Diversification, like you said, is key because I do, and I think I spread it to maybe I have 4 right now, and I've taken Kelce that early, mostly because I really like the fact that Mahomes right there, if I can grab him, is such a fun pairing, especially in best ball. And I lean to McCaffrey. I went as far recently, and I even made Chubb the number 2 pick overall, which I'm sure drew the ire of some. But I don't like to have the same. I don't want Jefferson in every league as much as I would like Jefferson. Don't get me wrong, but I have some pieces of Chase. Kupp is the one that I need to get more into, and I had been reluctant that early, but I'm coming on board. I wasn't too far off.
I'm with you there. I think spreading it around a little bit. I do think there's, we keep talking about this, ADP, and I'm going to start hammering this because I did not listen to my own advice. We did a mock draft Monday on the Football Diehards radio program last night. You can listen to that on SiriusXM, people. It's every Monday, Thursday, Friday, 10 p.m., Saturdays at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Give it a listen. We have lots of fun things going on, including our mock draft Monday. But I'm keen on Jamyr Gibbs, right? So I got into the tail end of round 3, thought I could, maybe let him slip around the turn. I had the 10th pick. He did not slip around the turn. And so, just talk a little bit about how you gauge, when to take a player versus ADP. I want to remind everyone ADP is not, is when players are going. It's not when you should take them. There's a distinction there, and you have to be aware of it. And you have to be in part aware of the room you're drafting in, correct?
Exactly. I think that's one of the keys. I think there's so many little nuanced things that when you've been playing for 20 plus years, like some of us, you may take it for granted that you look, if you're in the 4 or 5 spot, and you evaluate who's been taken at 1, 2, 3, 4. And as these leagues grow in size, like it used to be 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a tight end, a kicker, and your defense call it a day. Now there's super flex and 4 different flex spots and limited. So it's not as, easy to digest and see that if the number 1 and 2 spot both have a tight end that you can wait. But if I'm at the corner or at the turn, I have no problem jumping ADP by, a dozen picks. It doesn't bother me because if I want a person that's going to be there, I'm playing the law of I'm gambling at that point, and I think there's plenty of ways to go about doing so. The return and the, opportunity cost that you give up by taking someone a little early if you think they could make it back. But at the end of the day, I think that's where you have your own tiers and got to trust your gut. And I think that's why picking 6 is sometimes nice because you don't have to feel guilty. And people do that a lot. I think they shouldn't. Just feel guilty that you jump too early, that people are going to mock you and say, can you believe Bob Harris took, so-and-so 14 picks ahead of ADP? Who cares? Right. Because no one looks back at the end of the season and goes, look at the value Bob Harris got anymore, because chances are they got 3rd or 4th in their league and they don't pay attention to who won.
Yes, that is exactly correct. And nobody cares if you didn't come in first place. Nobody remembers anything about you when you're not in first place and you're not holding up that belt. We're talking to Nate Marcum from Fantasy and Frames. He's a Fantasy Pros, top 5 IDP ranker, does some great podcasts. Shoot the Gap Pod, nice defensive piece, the 4th and Frames Pod. I'll be seeing him in Canton at the Expo. He's a Kings Classic participant as well. So we'll have a good time there in Canton. Hope to see many of you in the chat out there. Follow him on Twitter at his name, at Nate Marcum, NateMarcum. Don't miss out on that. And great content again. Love what the Fantasy and Frames people do and love the group that you've assembled there. So happy to have you people on and see you all. That's where I met Jorge, was in Canton the first year, I think, of the Expo. So it's been a great run with just hanging out with everybody. I want to get in. We do have a question here. I guess I want to get to this as well. Javonte Williams in Dynasty. Is he a sell now or is he better to be a hold?
I just don't know what the sell value is. That's my concern. Is that if you can get the right price, then of course. But I think the talks being positive right now probably will give you the most return, and I'm comfortable with the sell now because, and maybe I'm just pessimistic with this, but I don't think that he's Adrian Peterson and going to return and have a season better than the last healthy year with a multiple ligament injury. That's just, it's betting against the odds, despite the fact that I just said that I've drafted Johnathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs and Breece Hall on the same team. I like to diversify risk, and sometimes I think that the risk is just a little too great for Javonte, and I've seen him creeping up pretty high in drafts. Yourself?
Yeah, I've seen it as well, and I think I think I'm okay if the climb stops right outside the running back 2 range. If you want to take a chance on him as a running back 3, I'm okay with it. I'm probably not doing a heck of a lot of it, but I get why you would. Makes total sense. So, and that's right now. I think he stopped at like 25. Last I checked, he was 25 on Underdog Fantasy, and probably in sharper plays. Some of the FFPC and things like that. People are probably going to not be as aggressive with him. Maybe someone will. I'm not going to be overly aggressive for all the reasons you said. It's just not. You should temper your enthusiasm for people coming off these injuries. It makes perfect sense. Dame wants to know, in a 3 wide receiver, 3 flex dynasty, would you trade for Johnathan Taylor, or would you trade Johnathan Taylor for Tee Higgins or Devonta, or hold or JT's value to get right?
Man, that so many receivers that I think the value of those two is definitely higher. That being said, I love the idea of the combination of what JT and Richardson can have for the next couple of years. I think it's such a dynamic situation with an offense and an offensive mind that can come in and get the best out of both. Hopefully not use what they did in Philly with their running backs necessarily, but I don't think that, Indy doesn't have 4 to choose from. They don't have to play the juggle game of Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott. They pretty much have JT, and no offense to Evan Hull, but that's pretty much what they got. So I'm on the Johnathan Taylor side. Maybe you lean one of the receivers.
In this case, he's 24, but I think the key here is what Dave said. Hold for the value to get right. I'm holding for the value to get right. It's coming off a down year. I would like them to have one good year, and maybe I get something, and I did have a change of heart when I see how he looks working with Anthony Richardson, and maybe this is a much better offense than we expect. So I think I'd hold. I have a big thing for Devonta. I like him. I prefer him to Tee Higgins. One issue is what is Tee Higgins' long-term future in Cincinnati, or are they going to be able to find enough money to pay Joe Burrow and him? And thanks, Joe Mixon, for your early contribution to that effort. But I don't know that it was enough to keep everyone on board. So, and Devonta, I'm a huge Devonta fan. I think honestly, as much as everyone likes A.J. Brown and I like A.J. Brown, I'm still viewing Devonta as a 1A. I don't view him as a 2. I think Waddle's right in that same league there, where I think Higgins, I think we've drafted him as a 1A, but I think he's not quite there.
Yeah, I think that if there was a case to be made, I think that there's too much hype right now on the talk of only when Goddard was gone that Devonta Smith was as dynamic, because was he as dynamic as he was without Goddard? Well, no. But that's also like saying there wasn't still value and excellent value. And we're seeing growth in all places on that Philadelphia team as well. So that's where I'm as optimistic with Devonta as you are.
That's the same expectation I have here. By the way, if you're just joining us and you don't know what the hell's going on, I'm Bob Harris. I mentioned he's Nate Marcum. Follow me on Twitter at FootballDiehard. Go and check out the Football Diehards website. Use the promo code Diehards, 15% off. The magazines are there. They are snapshots in time. We realize that, so we hook you up with a subscription to some premium content for the August Update Draft Guide. Starts next Tuesday, people. Get excited for that. I know I am. And also check out the Football Diehards radio program on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio 4 times a week. Soon to be more as we get into the season. So more news on that coming. I think, and definitely subscribe to this channel. It's a great resource, people. We have a great time here 2 times a week for these live streams, tons of shorts, and we'll be doing more content as the season comes on. John Fusek says he's been mocking and still not sure what the best draft position is in the third-round reversal draft. What position do you like in the third-round reversal drafts like NFFC? We just did the Scott Fish Bowl. I'm in that. I mentioned one that I'm in doing now. Murph's League is a third-round reversal as well. And I was asked if I thought it was an unfair advantage, to have that late pick. Is the third-round reversal unfair? No, people. It's what you're after.
Yeah. No, and, I went back and forth, and I did so many mocks. I mean, we did the Scott Fish Bowl mocks over at Fantasy and Frames, where we did almost 200 of them, which was maybe about 195 more than I should have done, because all it did is give me false hope that I could get A, B, and C. But I had picked out of the 4 spot because I really thought that there was a pretty high tier gap, or steep tier gap, from the top quarterbacks to some of the names that you could get later on that seemed to fall down, the Geno Smiths, the Aaron Rodgers, for me, the Matthew Stafford, who was going extremely late by my comparison, or by my, at least, expectations. And I was fine with that. But I also know a couple years back, when you were sitting at the 11-12, that was, to me, a distinct advantage then, because I don't think there was as quite a difference. But that's a year-to-year kind of a dichotomy of thinking sometimes, is who you see later on and who you believe in. And where'd you pick in Scott Fish Bowl?
I picked 11. And part of that, I like to pick at the tail end in general, but I like it even more with the third round reversal. I think it does give you a little bit of an edge. I don't say unfair edge because you're paying a price the rest of the draft, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
You have the long turnarounds. I'm big on the tail end. Like I'm fine on either end. I like being on either end. I think having the early pick, I tend to be a little more conservative and play it a little safer. Whereas if I'm on the tail end, I get that more aggressive approach and I lean into players and what you talked about earlier, I'm not afraid to jump up around and to grab somebody because I don't know if they're going to make it back to me. And so I think I like having my hand forced a little bit. I think I need that, kind of bucks against the conservative nature. We want to play it safe. I don't want to play it safe. I want to win. Damn it.
Exactly. I'm right there with you.
So
Safety is.
I get it. I always say you can have a risk in a roster without having a risky roster. You can take all the risk all the time, by drafting certain kinds of players or archetypes of players that you feel are safer plays, but that gives you room to grab the boom bust guys and maybe take advantage of that and maybe catch a little lightning in the bottle that way as well. You mentioned this, we talked about the mock draft for the Scott Fish Bowl. The one I did with you guys totally changed my whole idea of why I was even bothering mocking because I just got destroyed in that draft. And I felt like, hell, I'm going to stop doing these because I don't want to sour myself on my strategy. And that one almost put me off my strategy. For mocking, Scott Fish is a unique league. And we play in a lot of unique leagues, but in general, do you find just best ball is the way to mock in general? I mean, it's close enough to how your home leagues are going to play out, at least early in the draft, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you just hit one key thing. We have such a tendency to mock with each other that, and I'm not knocking any guys in home leagues by any means, because there's plenty of people every year that tell me when they beat me that why I do this, cover this all year round, or at least pay attention, and they still beat me. They tell me a lot. Well, and I realize that, yeah, the best ball ones do give you the overall. Just all I'm looking for is somewhat of a blueprint. I don't need to know exactly, but I like to know pockets. And if I'm sitting in that 5-6 turn, and I know there's a pocket of running backs that I really like, when I'm making a decision in that second round between a running back and a receiver, I have to kind of harken back and think that's, stay calm, Nate. You know that there are X, Y, and Z that should be there. And if they're not, you pivot. But for the most part, that's my thing. I like the pocket revelations that I can come up with a little bit more so than thinking I guarantee I'm going to get Chubb at 8 and he go at 7 and then throw the papers in the air and, have to completely abandon ship.
First of all, drafting is fun, so I want to do it a whole bunch. But also, it's just being steeped in any subject. It makes you feel more comfortable, and the drafts that matter the most happen later this month, and you feel like you want to have a really good understanding of where players have been going and where you might get them and what kind of things might happen. I think this is the way to do it. I know not everyone's out there playing in 100 best ball or triple-digit best balls or whatever. That's fine as well. You can share with us. We'll give you our experiences there. And I do think there's a difference when you get into those leagues that matter the most. So again, we'll be drafting the Kings Classic. I approach those a little differently than I approach best ball. But also you have to manage into the season and keep your finger on the pulse there. That's going to be the 9 out of 10 times. The route to victory is not going to come in the draft. It's just setting the baseline there. So I want to talk about a couple of situations here that I think have been confounding people at the running back position. And I think we got a little bit of something today. The Seattle situation, both top running backs, Kenneth Walker III, Zach Charbonnet, a little beat up. It doesn't sound serious, although Charbonnet is a little bit more worrisome. I heard the indefinite word used. That always makes me a little nervous. It's a groin for Walker. They seem like they just want to be cautious. Dan Graziano from ESPN reporting today after visiting camp that he sees this split being what I expect. Right, the Seahawks have a history. Pete Carroll has a history. He has a guy he likes. He drafts another guy. He sticks with the guy he likes until he can't. Usually when that guy gets hurt, then the other guy's really good. Comes in when that guy takes over, and we can see that goes from Carson to Penny, from Penny to Walker. Now we have Walker and Charbonnet. I think Graziano's suggesting a 60-40 split. That Charbonnet will have a role, but this is Kenneth Walker's job. Are you drafting them that way? And the gap is pretty wide between them, I think, right now. And Walker's going fairly high. Is 60% of that workload enough for you to justify, his price?
I think that what we saw last year in a 16 touch per game basis, that he's explosive enough to provide value at where he's going. I do have concerns, soft tissue with this early. I'm never a huge fan of that. But to answer your question as far as order is, yes, I have Kenneth Walker. I don't have a ton of shares of Charbonnet because I think there's a case to be made that Kenneth Walker does produce early, and I think that goes from 60-40 to 70-30. And that 70-30 is really scary for Charbonnet. And honestly, the question I have that I have to confide with myself is, do I trust Geno that he can open up again? And if so, are they going to give him the keys to the car and let him even more wealth of talent around him? I will say this, the first couple weeks of the season, if they're both are injured, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm moving up pretty much all three of the receivers earlier, about another 4 or 5 spots, because I think that there's a case that maybe they try to pass it a little bit more to take some of the workload off the running backs. I'm intrigued to hear if you're in the same belief as that as well.
I think it's entirely possible. I think the direction of this offense is going to a more Rams approach. Shane Waldron, former coach, assistant on the Rams, now the offensive coordinator there. Pete Carroll's always been a run-first guy, but they seem to be building an offense that's made to pass a little more. Maybe they have some confidence in Geno, but certainly I do in Tyler Lockett. I'd draft the hell out of him. I think he's a criminally underpriced player, and I love getting that. I think DK Metcalf's a reasonable price. I'm not in on Jackson Smith and Jigba because I think the price is too high right now. Maybe that'll settle down somewhat, and I do think over, if there's Dynasty, I'm all in there, but a little concerned in the redraft because I still think that both Metcalf and Lockett are pretty strong plays. I think maybe the assumption is with Smith and Jigba there, maybe the Seahawks worry that Lockett's falling off. I don't think that's their worry. Talked to Scotty the King, Scott Engel, the other night, does a lot of work with the Seahawks, and that was kind of his impression as well. So that's kind of the direction I'm going. We have a question out here from Brian Larkin. I want to get to that, but first I want to talk about the Eagles backfield. A lot of glowing reports about DeAndre Swift. Nick Sirianni suggesting, maybe one of the reasons they didn't throw to the running backs as much was because their running backs weren't great receivers. I think rookie Miles Sanders would like a word with him. But if that's the case, all the beats I'm talking to think it's the Rashaad Penny show, that he's going to be the primary back. And I think he's a great value. He's going well after Smith. How do you feel like this backfield is going to play out running behind whoever it is, a great offensive line?
Yeah, the value for sure is in Rashaad Penny. The likelihood that I hate to ever worry about injuries or anything with Rashaad Penny is kind of synonymous. We know that. But there's a lot of mouths to feed for an offense that honestly can probably support multiple running backs better than anybody in the league, maybe outside of Atlanta, because we know they're going to run the ball effectively behind that line. I do think that it's definitely, I think, a heavier split than maybe a 50-50. I'm probably, if it was just the two, I'd probably lean 60-40 and give some of the workload to DeAndre Swift. But then again, that's also not exactly saying that I think that he's the beacon of health either. So right. I do think that Rashaad Penny's one that I wasn't early in on, and I've crept him up into that 27, 28 overall spot, really close to where I have DeAndre Swift. In fact, actually, I had him back-to-back at one point, kind of like I've done for years, is when I can't decide on two people that I think, I just put them back-to-back and figure it'll wash out eventually at some point. Terrible analysis.
Same. Totally, but that's totally like, an approach there. And I think, taking, letting other people take the Breece Halls and players like that earlier and waiting a little bit on either of those guys is fair game. I like Penny a little better. But I don't know that I can, I'm injury agnostic, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm worried about him getting hurt, because if he gets hurt, he does. I'm going to be more worried, could he be that guy running behind this offensive line that we saw late in 2021 when he was dominant? And by dominant, I mean over the last 6 games of the season running for 200 yards more than any other back in the NFL. That's dominant, people. That's league-winning dominant. So I'm interested in that at the right price. And reminder that the Eagles threw the ball to their running backs fewer times than any other team in the NFL last year. So if Nick Sirianni is saying it's based on talent and abilities, I mean, they're going to throw to their running backs more, it's a low bar. More is like, okay, they're going to be the 30th ranked team in passes to the running back. So I have concerns there. The question from Brian Larkin is, and you might like this one from the St. Louis area, who will be the Chiefs' number one wide receiver? He's thinking of a QB tight end wide receiver stack. Go.
God, I wish I had an answer. A good one that was going to win people leagues. But you want to talk about diversification. That's my biggest diversification is having a piece of something. I think the easy, safest answer would be Sky Moore. But I think the true answer is probably from a value perspective is probably MVS. I think MVS has the best path to playing the most consistent snaps. I think we've seen that it's intermittent. It sucks on some weeks. There will be a 2 for 28 week, and there will be a 6 for 115 week, maybe 4 for 115. But there will be the highs and lows. I would love for it to be Justin Ross because I'm heavily invested in him.
Dame in the chat out there, throwing that out there for sure.
I love the blend of size and speed, and he's got sure hands, and he was wowing at camp, and Rashee Rice has an ability. The one thing I saw last year with Sky Moore is that he was one of the most heavily targeted for, I don't want to call him gadget, but I want to say directed targets and directed plays to him. Now, I wonder if he's going to have that same role. There's been talks out of KC that he is going to take on a more outside role than more of a slot gadget, because the comparison was Micheal Hardman, and they wanted to make sure people knew that this is not a Micheal Hardman comparison. He is one in himself, and he will take on what is that target percentage. Bob, I don't know if anybody outside of Travis Kelce will eclipse 18%. And I think that that's a scary proposition because it only takes 20% for you to be probably a top 30 wide receiver in that offense. But right. I mean, it doesn't.
So the Chiefs have told us who their wide receiver one is. It's Travis Kelce. They moved on from Tyreek Hill. They didn't want to pay that. They're paying the quarterback, the tight end. The number one wide receiver is going to be the open receiver on any given play. And I'm flabbergasted at the Justin Watson slander going on here. All you guys got eyes for Justin Ross. I'm telling you. No, I'm not telling you anything. Because it's wide open here, right? And that's the thing. I do have shares of Kadarius Toney before the knee surgery. Now that he's had that, I don't think he'll be out long. And I'm not one of those people who pretends injured players stay injured. If he could ever live up to his potential, I think he could be a huge playmaking threat in this offense. And Andy Reid, I trust, will come up with creative ways to use him. But I think you're probably right. Like, just purely on a value standpoint, I probably have more MVS than the others. But I think you can pick your poison because that's what Patrick Mahomes does. He reads the defense, he looks it over, and he's finding the open guy. Mr. Scampers loves Justin Watson. I knew he would. So we'll see what plays out there. I do think so. I think the answer, Brian, is on that stack. When do you want to get the guy? It can be literally at every level. You can find someone worth taking, and so I'm not against doing that stack. I just think you need to set your expectations accordingly. Expecting someone to really rise up, unless it's a healthy Kadarius Toney, I think you're reaching. What is the riskiest player at their current price? Do I feel like I have an easy answer for this? It's Breece Hall. Where are you at?
That's funny. Breece Hall was definitely to my list. Asked me that same question, a month ago, and Kadarius Toney would have been near the top of that list as well because I thought that I heard a question asked early in the season, early in whatever we call this off-season hype, is that if you had a crystal ball to determine whose year-end output, that was one that I definitely was big on. I think right now, also, we're going to go back to Anthony Richardson. I think that risk with the Johnathan Taylor talk has me a little concerned, mostly because where his ADP has been, and it is starting to creep back down. It's going in the better direction for us fans of his. But Breece Hall definitely right now, because, there's a non-zero chance that Dalvin Cook doesn't come in and ruin the party, not completely, but pretty close to completely. And
right.
They would be smart to utilize both of them going forward, regardless of if this is just an early, because that's a lot of the talk too, is the Jets have this really, really difficult schedule to start the season off. They want to be competitive. They bring someone like Dalvin Cook in to ease that loss of Breece Hall early, and then they work them both in. And I don't know. I'll add one more because I want to hear what your take, because I think it's as polarizing a player as Alexander Mattison. I personally can see both sides of that. I would lean on the I'm not drafting him where he's going, but the case is sound if you have the opposing feeling.
I think it's my favorite thing about Alexander Mattison is he draws some drafters before guys that I like better going just a little bit later who might have gone to those people who were taking Mattison. And so my only real complaint there is that this offense is so pass happy. And as Matt Donnelly pointed out on the Football Diehards radio program last night, it's been going up. It's trending upwards. Would you be surprised if they were over 65% pass? I mean, they were 64.5% pass last year. I think that kind of limits it. And then Ben Gessling comes out with an article on the Star Tribune a couple of days ago where, he started playing up the notion that we were going to see Ty Chandler, we're going to see Kenneth Walker, we're going to see maybe Dwayne McBride at times. Well, if that's the case and they're only running the ball 35% of the time, I would have concerns. So I'll take the other side of that. And if you go out on the Twitter and search it, or the X, whatever. I don't know. Right. I'm not keeping up with all the shenanigans. But Evan Silva, I kind of ran across the video, just a clip of him talking about Alexander Mattison in very positive ways, and Evan Silva is pretty convincing. But also, he had some good data behind him. So I do think it's kind of a two-edged sword. I've gotten some shares of him, but I'm not going out of my way to get him. He's not one of those guys I'll jump up ahead of ADP to grab. He's got to come to me. Jim Furry wants to know, does Marvin Mims take Tim Patrick's place? Tim Patrick, we learned that for sure has the Achilles. Kind of knew that was coming. KJ Hamler out for about a month. Sounds like they're waiving him with a non-football related illness. So there is some room here. There's a little opportunity. I know Stacey Perez probably very happy about this. What do you think about Marvin Mims?
I think that he will fill the routes run that Tim Patrick will be losing. Because, that was it pericarditis that KJ Hamler has, which is most likely not long-term. I mean, I hope it's not for his sake, for his health. I think that the person who sees the biggest boost from that will probably be Greg Dulcich. But I think that I do think that it's probably most likely Mims that occupies the routes run. Will that lead to production similar to what Tim Patrick could have provided? Probably not. But that whole offense is confusing that I don't know what to think about them. I'm intrigued to hear how, where your stance on Denver with that Sean Payton-led offense will be.
I feel my stance on Denver is where my stance was on the Giants last year. And I hope I get the same outcome. I felt like the Giants would be better with Brian Daboll. Well, just a competent offensive mind running things. And I think they ended up being more better than I thought, right? It was a super low bar. It is, again, in Denver, a super low bar. They're going to be better. How much better may depend some on Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine. Can they get that running game? They seem to be building for that. They've got a good defense. So maybe they don't have to, push the envelope offensively. I do think, again, you look at the receiving weapons. I think the cheaper ones are more appealing to me. Jerry Jeudy, I think, is going a little high. Cortland Sutton, maybe just right in the Goldilocks range. Dulcich starting to climb up a little bit, but still, like a reasonable price. So I'm willing to put a little bit of hope on Sean Payton, despite his willingness to throw other coaches he doesn't know under the bus. What are you doing, Sean Payton? If you're going to do that, don't apologize for sure, man. Just say, I said it and I meant it. Suck it, Aaron Rodgers. So JSC, I know you came in late. I hope you watched the replay of this and get the whole in-depth version of the Johnathan Taylor thing, which we started the program with. But the short version, at what point does Johnathan Taylor become a steal? I think we both agree it's probably, if he's getting into the fourth round, be careful there. You're not going to see him go that far. I'll say third round is a super steal. I'm still going into the second round. I think that's still a great value. I don't think you have any disagreement there, Nate.
Nope.
Right. We the overall the TLDR point is we're not going to overplay the current issues, and we think they'll probably be diminished greatly by September. Maybe that's just being hopeful. And Nate Marcum seems like a very hopeful man. Again, follow him on Twitter at Nate Marcum. It's his name. You see it spelled right underneath us. So put that in your Twitterverse. Follow at Fantasy and Frames. Great organization. Jorge Edwards doing a great job of putting that place together. Some great talents there too. I love chopping it up with the people on the shows. Have done a number of them. So looking forward to doing more of that. A couple more just quick hitters here that I kind of am interested in general. We talked about Javonte Williams. We talked about Breece Hall a little bit. Let's talk about J.K. Dobins. Is this another one where when we hit September, we're going to forget all this? John Harbaugh called it complicated. I don't like complicated. I like simple. We're not sure. Is there injury? Is it just the contract situation? I think it's more of the latter. And I think, I don't know what J.K. Dobbins is thinking. Not showing up is going to help him get a better contract. But where are you at on drafting him?
I was extremely high on drafting him before. I love everything about the upside of what J.K. Dobbins could have in that offense. We've seen it with Todd Monken. They just came out today and mentioned that in practices, their pace of play is this is the fastest they've seen within a Baltimore organization in years. And coming off a team that was 18th last year in plays per game, it didn't take much to get better. But somebody came out, and I don't have it in front of me, and it was on their team. I think it was, doesn't matter. I don't like speculating. That really said they don't think he's going to, they're like, he's sitting out as like affirmative, like he's not going to play. And I don't buy that one bit. I think that's again, that fellow running back posturing a little bit to try to get something done.
Oh, was it Dalvin Cook?
Was it Dalvin that said somebody did? And I'm sorry, I know this is captivating audio whenever I don't remember, but there is a report. Somebody, prominence, and we'll say it's Dalvin Cook. Yeah, we'll say it convincingly until proven otherwise. It was 100% Dalvin Cook. You and I were there, Bob. We were sitting next to him at a Starbucks when he said it. J.K. Dobbins is not playing, but I think it's another one. I don't think there's any of these guys that actually do sit out personally. I think that every one of them reports. I think that everybody wants to complain about money, but at the end of the day, if you're going to complain about it, why give it up entirely? I know you want to have a stance and rah, let's get everybody paid. But I love the situation. The dip right now is getting better. Where's he at? He is 79. That's
I like that price.
Yeah, 60 overall.
I think that's a super fair price. Nate, do you prefer Bijan Robinson or Christian McCaffrey this year?
I'm still going to go McCaffrey. I think the offense has a better chance. I love Bijan, and I love that system. I love Arthur Smith, but I worry about Desmond Ridder being able to give Bijan that double-digit touchdown, up that we're hoping for. I
love 3 rounds later, Bijan Robinson. His name is Jamyr Gibbs. You'll not push me off that hill. I will die there. Certainly, and I may well, because I'm way all in on that one. So it's great reviews on Gibbs, great reviews on Darren Waller. Where are you at on the tight ends not named Travis Kelce? What's kind of the approach?
Honestly, it's that approach. If it's not Kelce, I like Goddard. I like Darren Waller a lot. But I'm probably waiting for the aforementioned Greg Dulcich. I was big on Chig until D-Hop went there, and that's kind of soured just a little bit. But I feel that outside of, Kelce, and you can throw Andrews into the mix, especially if it's not Rashaad Bateman. If his foot actually is wonky, then it's less mouths to feed, if we want to say that. So I'm probably either top 2 or 3, or I'm just going to wait and hope someone falls. If not, I'll take a Dulcich, or I'll even still take Chig if it lasts too long.
All right, we'll close it out with this auction strategy. How long are you waiting before you jump into the bidding?
I change it up. I don't do anything consistent in an auction. Bob, I told Drew Davenport, him and I are doing the auction panel at the expo, and I am so neurotic and so either crazy or whatever. I fake write. Like I have a piece of paper right here, and I'm pretending that I'm writing the person's name down so they think they know I got the guy when I don't want him. It's lunacy. I'm a lunatic, but I never keep the same routine. I like to throw it off and vary it up.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Kings Classic, one of my favorites. We do the snake, then we do the auction. The auction coming off the defending champion in the Jim Brown division. You're welcome, everybody. Eager to get back into it. And I think I've learned a lot just from the Kings Classic. I learned a lot about patience from the likes of Drew Davenport, Brad Cruz, who I often draft with, and so we'll have to do a whole show. We'll have to get you and Drew both on and talk auctions here before we get into the season. I want to thank you so much for the time tonight, Nate. Looking forward to seeing you at the Expo. Again, follow Nate on Twitter at Nate Marcum. It's his name, NateMarcum. Don't miss out on the good stuff going on at Fantasy and Frames. Great IDP mind as well. So well-rounded fantasy analyst we have here. Nate, thanks so much. We'll talk to you all soon. Go to FootballDiehards.com. It's a great site. You'll love it. Use the promo code Diehards. Get 15% off. And also, check out the Football Diehards on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio Monday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I'm Bob Harris. Over and out.